We begin with the state of Montana, which has become the first state to ban TikTok. This obviously has been an issue on the nationwide level as well, as the United States has looked to ban TikTok ostensibly because TikTok is Chinese owned, Chinese influenced, and perhaps basically just a covert or less than covert surveillance spying device by the Chinese government, depending on how such things are looked at. So the United States government has been looking at this ban as well. And Montana has also now been looking at the ban and has acted to ban TikTok. So this will potentially spurn action by other states and potentially the US government as well. And obviously serves as a potential legal test case for all this. So is this legal? Can Montana do this? Let's learn a little bit more and discuss some of the legal issues that are potentially involved. Montana has become the first state to ban TikTok. The governor signed the law saying that he wants to protect states' residents' private information from being compromised, pointing to the Chinese government as a potential threat, saying, quote, the Chinese Communist Party uses TikTok to spy on Americans, violate privacy, and collect personal, private, and sensitive information that is well documented. Some of this information, of course, users don't necessarily know the device is capturing, depending on who you believe about what TikTok is doing behind the scenes and what kind of data they are doing. Is sort of, are they listening via the microphone? Are they watching via the camera? All kinds of metadata, location data, activity data, usage of other apps, stuff that perhaps users don't even know about is being captured. And that's a lot of open source intelligence, or at least not private source intelligence that you could get if you get that sort of data. That's a lot of data that could lead to potentially compromising national security. So is that what's happening? Is that the reason Montana's doing that? Can Montana make that choice? Those are some of the issues that are involved in trying to parse all this out. There is no direct evidence the Chinese government has ever accessed TikTok, but critics point to laws in China that allow government to access company records. So TikTok is ostensibly separate from the Chinese government, but do you really believe that? Of course, you could ask the same question about the United States, to be fair. Is Facebook really separate from the US government? And that question, of course, isn't clear sometimes because we've learned from many leaks, including the Twitter files, the United States government has, let's say, interplay with Facebook and Twitter and other social media companies, at least as far as they're having some, dipping their toes in the waters of such things. That's at least what's publicly known. And then, of course, what's really true behind that is a whole nother thing. And that's in the United States. With China and their government and their governmental system, are they that limited? Or are they doing more? How involved are they? How separate are they in China? Is a good question. According to the measure, platforms that offer the app, such as Google and Apple, will be subject to fines of $10,000 a day, which would be enough to at least get someone's attention, I would think, even for companies like Google and Apple that are worth trillions. $10,000 a day will get someone's attention, I would think. So you will have to see a battle potentially. So you are looking at a lawsuit from Apple, you're looking at a lawsuit from Google, you're looking at a lawsuit from TikTok, among others, users of the app, First Amendment groups, all kinds of stuff. The ban is currently scheduled to take effect January 1st, 2024, which is pretty typical, by the way, for state laws. It is very typical that state laws either take effect the first of the year or some other date. Like July 1st is a very common date for laws to take effect. So it is usually true that laws don't take immediate effect. Give people time to learn about it. Of course, this bill will, of course, be challenged if a lawsuit hasn't already been filed. Somewhere on this, the ACLU thinks the ban might be unconstitutional. They might be right. Last December, the governor banned TikTok on governmental devices, which of course raises fewer issues because they're governmental devices. They are owned by the government. So the government has the right to sort of control its own property and its own tools. It would be the same as you or me making a private decision to not use TikTok on our apps. So if the government says no TikTok on any of our devices, it's the government making the choice for itself. So that obviously raises less problems. When we bring it to private citizens, more problems. The ban would now be expanded to include all social media applications that collect and provide user personal information or data to a foreign adversary, depending on how we're defining that, or a person or entity located within a country designated as a foreign adversary. Again, how are we defining that? Is TikTok a foreign adversary? How do you know? Is China a foreign adversary? How do you know? Is Montana making these choices? Can Montana make these choices? Because this is foreign policy? Is that something that Montana can do? As opposed to the US government? Can Montana designate a foreign adversary? Debatable. President Biden signed legislation banning that from governmental devices, which again, same analysis. It's the government banning it from their own devices. So no problem that far. Has been considering an all-out ban as well. The United States and its Five Eyes security partners banned TikTok from all federal devices, citing national security concerns. So Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and the United States have all banned TikTok from their own devices, as they have a right to do, and looking at further expansion bans. Thus, that brings us to the end of this discussion for the moment about TikTok on private devices. This raises a lot of concerns. Now, TikTok is a private entity, obviously. The states typically have the ability to regulate the internet because the US national government took it off of status as a common carrier. This was something that the federal government had done for a period. The Obama administration reversed and took it off of common carrier status. So this seems to therefore leave it up to states to regulate, right? The alternative would be a federal common carrier status, which would leave it up to the federal government to regulate. But they seem to have left it to the states to regulate. So the states can seem to regulate the internet in the first instance. So Montana is chosen to regulate this as a matter of its own state law, which it appears it probably has a right to do. Then, of course, TikTok is undoubtedly a First Amendment application. It is press, it can't be denied. And so our motivations and our reasons for banning this become really, really important as we're doing the First Amendment analysis. Are we doing this to limit speech, which is a real problem, or are we really doing this for other reasons, in which case maybe it's less a problem? And also, of course, because it's Montana as opposed to the US government, and we're designating foreign adversaries, can Montana really do that? Because Montana doesn't really have power when it comes to international relationships. That's sort of the domain of the federal government. So can Montana designate this? So there is a big difference, in my opinion, as to the United States government doing this on a nationwide basis, in which case national security concerns go a long way as it relates to things. Also because the United States government has insane power when it comes to the border. So actually, whether the First Amendment applies at all, if the federal government were to ban TikTok, isn't necessarily even 100% clear. Because if China is the one doing it and the US just simply says you can't import this, then it's not even clear the First Amendment applies at all because of how much power the government has at the border. So the federal government doing this raises different questions and questions that seem to favor the federal government. Montana doing this, less clear. You can bet there will be many, many lawsuits. I think very tentatively they can do this, but it's going to depend a lot on the details, I'm sure. That, for the moment, brings us to the end of discussion of this case.